down the ladder, we reach the beacon. While the status effects it can produce are powerful, it's certainly not as complicated as a golem or a vex. Further down are golden apples and then potions. Again, some useful effects, but not to the same level as the beacon. These status effects are temporary and are on a much smaller scale. Things are a little fuzzy down here, but enchantment is probably similar to potions. It's restricted to individual equipment and is relatively common throughout the world. Now, it may seem like we've just reached the bottom of the magic hierarchy, but we should nonetheless ask the question, is there anything less complex than potions? We have to think about it for a bit, but there does appear to be something that would fit the bill. Suspicious stew. This is a food item that often flies under the radar. It's not even found in the crafting book. A player who consumes it gains one of several status effects, ranging from fire resistance to jump boost to blindness. However, the duration is very short, typically somewhere between 2 and 10 seconds. How does one make a suspicious stew? It's almost the same as mushroom stew, made with brown and red mushrooms. The difference is that suspicious stew includes an additional flower depending on the desired status effect. For example, a brown mushroom, a red mushroom, and a poppy make a suspicious stew with 4 seconds of night vision. Another possibility is combining mushrooms and azure bluette to cause temporary blindness. Let's think for a second about how similar this is to potion brewing. We are combining ingredients to produce a drinkable item that causes a status effect. Since these effects are short-lived, it seems logical to put suspicious stew lower on the hierarchy than potions. There's another similarity between the two that is easy to overlook. Both use a base and an active ingredient. In potion brewing, the active ingredient would be the gas tier, blistering melon, phantom membrane, and other similar items. In suspicious stew, the active ingredient is the flower. How about the base? In potion brewing, it's almost always a nether wart, required to make an awkward potion. Similarly, all suspicious stews need a brown and a red mushroom. There's a clear parallel between the nether wart and the mushrooms. It's as if they're serving the same purpose in both types of concoctions. There's some sort of fundamental similarity between the two. The most basic connection is that both are fungi. If we head to the nether, we'll find huge tree-like structures called huge fungi. They're made out of nether wart blocks, which is strong evidence that the nether wart is a fungus. Furthermore, mushrooms and nether warts have a visual similarity. You can just make out the cap while it grows. From this, it would seem as though mushrooms are an even less complex form of magic than suspicious stew. Potions and stew are both ultimately derived from fungus, which implies that mushrooms, nether warts, and other fungi hold a foundational place in the structure of Minecraft magic. In the past, I've discussed the idea of magical energy, perhaps in a bit too much detail. The basic concept is that magic in Minecraft doesn't just occur randomly, it always requires some type of energy. This applies to potions and suspicious stew. The effects they produce are the result of magical energy coming from somewhere. While potions do require blaze powder, that doesn't appear to be the most fundamental source of magical power. Instead, it's gotta be the nether wart. That's what provides the magical base from which more complex things can happen. Similarly, the energy in the suspicious stew is coming from the mushrooms. It's therefore logical to assume that fungus serves as a relatively dense source of magical energy. But don't take my word for it. There are others in the Minecraft universe who've discovered this. The first place to look is the cleric villagers. While the name might lead us to think that they are magical experts, in reality they don't seem to have much actual knowledge of potion brewing. Despite their brewing stands, they don't sell any true potions besides bottles of enchanting. One reason for this is they have no access to nether warts. They must have at least heard of them, since they'll gladly buy warts from the player. Unfortunately, we don't see any evidence that they know what to do once they have them. What about the witch? I've argued that witches are cleric villagers who've been outcast for tampering with the undead. In Igloo Basements, we can see that the witch was attempting to cure the zombie villager. Part of this included making a potion of weakness, something we never see normal clerics do. But how did the witch brew a potion without nether warts? Well, it turns out that the potion of weakness has a special recipe. It's the one potion that does not require a nether wart to brew. Instead, it uses a fermented spider eye, which contains a brown mushroom. In essence, what the witch was able to do was realize that the fabled nether warts were not necessary. Instead, mushrooms could get the job done. These mushrooms were exceedingly powerful, even able to cure the zombie disease which had long plagued the villagers. The witch had rediscovered the magical capabilities of mushrooms, especially with respect to the undead. Let's keep going with this. When the witch was banished, where did they go? To swamps, one of the few places above ground with an abundance of mushrooms. Furthermore, the witch cultivates red mushrooms in a pot on the windowsill. Presumably, they use these to brew potions in their cauldron. It would seem as though the witch understands that mushrooms are a key source of magical energy. The theme of discovering the utility of mushrooms shows up in a different place. The Illagers are the group with the most complex magic, far beyond anything the witch has ever done. Yet, they too understand the importance of mushrooms. Their home base is the Woodland Mansion, an extremely rare structure that is found in the Dark Forest biome. Dark forests have huge mushrooms scattered about, something that is rare in other places. Furthermore, we can find mushrooms in the mansions themselves. There's a room where the Illagers are clearly farming them. Is it for food? That's not likely. Mushroom stew is not found in any chests owned by the Illagers. Instead, it appears that they survive on mostly bread, which is found everywhere. The prevalence of mushrooms inside and outside the Woodland Mansions is not a coincidence. There's a reason the Illagers built their mansions here. It's the same reason for their mushroom farms. They understand that fungi are a crucial link to magical power. But it goes even deeper. Much like the witch, the Illagers' experiments tend to also deal with life and death, creating artificial life, summoning life from the void, and preventing fatal blows. And all of this is coming from fungus. Something about fungus causes it to be particularly connected to life and death. But what? It's time to briefly exit Minecraft and look at mushrooms in the real world. Mushrooms are in the fungus kingdom. Unlike plants, fungi do not have chlorophyll. This means that they are unable to produce energy using light photosynthesis. Instead, many mushrooms are saprotrophs. This means that they feed on non-living organic material, which helps break it down and recycle nutrients back into the ecosystem. In other words, some types of mushrooms grow using dead material. Now let's go back to Minecraft. It seems logical to assume that the mushrooms we find in-game work similarly to real-life mushrooms, absorbing nutrition from other sources in the environment. This occurs in the overworld. Their existence on fallen trees indicates that the Minecraft mushrooms are serving a similar role to the real-life mushrooms, decomposing the dead and using whatever energy remains. The nether wart does the same thing, although it appears at first to be more specialized since it grows on soul sand. We've talked about this before, but soul sand is a very unique block. Perhaps more than anything, it's tied to death. There appear to be screaming souls, and these can be released using the soul speed enchantment. Somehow, the soul sand is capable of absorbing energy from dead beings. For reasons I won't explain here, it has to do with the withering effect. Regardless of the details, netherworts are particularly keen to use some of this energy. Much like mushrooms, their power is derived from dead material. Yet, there's something strange going on with warts. If we explore the nether, we find huge forests of netherworts. These are the Crimson and Warped Forests. They're completely overrun by fungus. There are roots, sprouts, vines, shroomlights, and mycelium. However, despite these forests being made of netherwort blocks, something is missing. Where's the soul sand? Didn't we just say that netherworts needed to feed upon it? As we think about it, more questions arise. Why do the forested netherworts look so different? Why do the small versions never show up? While they have the same name, something has changed in these forests. There's an interesting piece of evidence found in a Block of the Week article. Take a look at this quote. Fungi-based technology is quite often used to decontaminate polluted environments. So next time you're wandering through a particularly contaminated part of the nether and wondering why there are lots of mushrooms, you've got your answer. There's a striking word used in that quote, contaminated. Webster's dictionary defines contaminated as soiled, stained, corrupted, or infected by contact or association. The fungi in the nether are feeding off of something. It would appear as though that something is not natural, an infection or a stain that shouldn't necessarily be there. Instead of using soul sand, these netherwort forests have found another source of energy, a contamination. And when we really start to think about it, isn't a lot of the nether contaminated? For example, soul sand valleys are, in many ways, the most unnatural biome in Minecraft. Netherrack has been almost totally replaced by soul sand. As we know, soul sand is closely associated with death and the wither. Why is there so much of it in these valleys? Clearly, a lot of something died here at one point. This leads us to a bit of an unsettling question. What would have the most to gain from a lot of death? The Enderman? Doesn't seem very likely. Striders or ghasts? Nah, it wouldn't affect them. No, it's the very thing we've been talking about this whole time. Fungus. Fungus thrives on death. It absorbs nutrients from dead materials. If, for some reason, there were to be a lot of death, wouldn't it primarily benefit fungus? With that, we have the pieces in place to tell a story about what may have happened, and finally understand the undead plague. We're gonna go back in time. The ancient nether was not the same as the nether we see today. It was much more barren, and generally devoid of life. Sure, some things eked out in existence. The ghasts floated around the lava pits, and blazes meandered through the wastes. There were also occasional patches of soul sand with nether warts. The soil was produced from the death of living nether beings. However, it was limited. There were relatively few things dying at any given moment, so there was not much for the nether warts to feed upon. Suddenly, a portal
I
appeared.
hope they don't
A
turn
curious
to
group
ice.
known as the Ancient Builders had discovered a way to teleport from the overworld to
Otherwise,
the nether.
I don't
These
think I can
ancient
set
builders
up
were
a
humanoid,
living
similar in
here.
size and shape to the Blair. There's a vast amount of evidence for their existence, such as the pyramids and ancient shipwrecks. I've referred to them many times in the Deep Dive series. The builders had just stumbled across the formula for interdimensional teleportation, and for the first time, there were outsiders in the Nether. It was a dangerous place, and the ancient builders were ill-suited for the hostile environment. Yet they explored the dimension anyways, and in doing so, discovered that the rare nether warts were powerful. When combined with materials from blazes, these warts could be used to brew magical potions. So the builders set up permanent settlements by constructing nether fortresses. Here, they could be relatively safe while cultivating nether warts and blazes. But as often happens in real life, the introduction of foreign beings came with unintended side effects. The ancient builders unknowingly brought with them spores of the overworld red and brown mushrooms. And it turned out that the energy-rich environment of the Nether was perfect for them. They began to pop up throughout the dimension. These were different from Nether warts. They were adapted to the overworld and thus did not need soul sand to grow. Meanwhile, the ancient builders were becoming increasingly entrenched in the dimension. It turned out that there were a lot more useful things in the Nether than they had initially realized. For example, netherite was a superior material. So superior, in fact, that they constructed huge bastion mining outposts. The transformation of pigs into piglins gave them a substantial workforce for their mining operation. Suddenly, the Nether wasn't quite as devoid of life as it used to be. It was being quickly colonized by living things from another place. The result of this was that there was much more death. Builders succumbed to the heat, piglins burned in the fire, pigs fell off of ledges. The dead material began to accumulate. For the saprotrophic mushrooms, it was paradise. There was more food than ever. As a result, the amount of fungi in the Nether began to increase dramatically. After all, they never needed to look far to find something dead. It was everywhere. Soul sand was becoming much more common. Now, there were entire areas of the Nether that were consumed by it. With such a dense concentration of soul energy, a new beast began to spawn. Withers. These were extraordinarily
I wonder if
powerful
any
and
of those
extremely
lead
effective
to
at killing.
diamond level.
They
Any
could
of the
quickly wipe
caves I've
out an
seen so
exploring
far
group
can
of
lead to
ancient
diamond
builders.
level.
What happened when they died? Even
The
more
best
soul
way to
sand
find
was
diamonds
produced.
now is
It was
by
a
just
snowball
caving
effect.
rather than
As
strip
soul sand
mining,
spread to more areas, bigger and bigger
which I
withers
think
began to
is a
form.
good thing.
They became so huge
No
and so
one
dominant that fighting
wants to
one
do
was a
strip
monumental
mining.
task for the ancient builders, and they were forced to avoid soul sand valleys whenever possible. However,
Something
they
we
did realize that there
begrudgingly
was some
accepted
benefit.
had to be
When a
done.
builder would die, they would bury them in these valleys instead of risking the spread of sand to other places. These valleys were dangerous anyways. Why not take advantage of it? But the fungus was starting to change. Thus far, we've talked about fungus being saprotrophic, feeding on dead material. However, in real life, there's another way in which fungus can get its energy: parasitism. In this scheme, parasitic fungi attack beings while they are still alive. This can cause disease and other major problems for the host, but it has the distinct advantage of mobility. Furthermore, certain types of parasites also use the host for reproduction. A famous example of this is the cordyceps fungus, which has varieties that can infect insects and arthropods. In a terrifying twist, the cordyceps takes control of the host, forcing it to climb higher and higher. Then, the fruiting body of the fungus bursts from its head, spreading the spores to more victims. There's an obvious example of this type of behavior in Minecraft: mushrooms. Found exclusively in the mushroom fields biome, mushrooms are cows that have been afflicted with a parasitic fungal disease. They're so far gone that we can explicitly see the mushrooms growing on them. We also know that mushrooms are not a new species, since it's possible to remove the shrooms using shears, returning it to a normal cow. No, this is an example of fungus acting as a parasite. Mushrooms have the ability to feed off of living cows. Netherworts can feed off of dead soul sand. What if these two abilities could combine to produce a crossbreed, a new way for the fungus to thrive and reproduce? Not living, not dead, but somewhere in the middle. Undead. An undead being would have many useful traits for the fungus. It could target and attack susceptible beings, thus continuing the life cycle. But the brain would be too infected to realize what was happening and attempt to cure itself. And the best part of this entire thing? There was a whole new dimension filled with potential hosts. And these hosts had an awfully convenient habit of returning to the Nether again and again. The undead disease started slowly, as novel infections usually do. The fungus affected a piglin or two. A couple of ancient builders contracted the disease. Yet, it wasn't long until the fungus began to completely explode in population. In Minecraft, mushrooms only grow in low light levels. The zombie fungus was no different. While it was fine during the nighttime, it was unable to survive the harsh light of day, burning up in the sun. Thus, the infected beings only emerged during the darkness. The infection spread throughout the overworld. It was so powerful that the number of ancient builders began to rapidly dwindle. While they did manage to cure the disease at one point, a critical component was gold for golden apples. There was a lot of gold in the nether, so the builders set up huge strips to bring as much gold over as possible. Yet, as they gained more life-saving gold, they brought the fungus over as well, only making the problem worse and worse. It didn't take long for there to be a mass extinction event, which ultimately killed off the species. Check out the above video if you want more information on how this happened. It's too long of a story to tell here. Suffice to say, the fungus was so effective that soon only the infected remained. With the ancient builders gone, things began to change in the nether. The huge withers began to die off because of a lack of things to kill, leaving only their bones in the soul sand valleys. The parasitic fungus found some susceptible
See what I mean though? Since I started in a cold biome, it's really hard to find any hot biomes.
And with them, new ecosystems developed. No longer restricted to just soul sand, the
No
nether
savannas
became
in
the areas
sight,
of the nether richest
or
in
blocks
life.
upon blocks.
Sure, there was a contamination brought forth by the ancient builders. Yet, as so often happens, life found a way to take advantage of it. This theory has a lot of moving parts, so let's take a step back to give a brief summary. Fungus is useful for many different magical purposes, which implies that it's getting its magical energy from somewhere.
I think I'm better off
We
trying
also
to
know
find
that
a
fungus can be saprotrophic, feeding off of dead material. This is how we see it most often in the overworld, and also with nether warts and soul sand.
desert instead.
However, it is
I
also
don't really have
possible
much
for
I can
fungus to be
use
parasitic.
sand for.
We see an explicit example of this
I
with the
can make
mushrooms.
glass, I
As
guess.
more and more ancient builders came to the netherwort fungus mutated with the overworld fungus and developed the ability to reproduce
I'm
by
already
converting
here.
living beings to an undead version. Thus, fungi could get the magical energy necessary for survival without needing for the host to be completely dead. This eventually spread to the overworld, and it ended up destroying the civilization of the ancient builders. As with all theories, I encourage you to think about this critically instead of taking my word for it. One possible issue was the following. If the zombie plague really is fungally based, then why don't the zombies ever totally decompose? I would once again bring up the mushrooms. It's not in the fungus's best interest to ever kill the host. Rather, it wants it to stay undead for as long as possible. That's why zombies attack villagers. Zombifying other beings keeps the fungus alive for longer, essentially acting as a way to reproduce. There may be some who disagree with the very premise that mushrooms are magical. You could very well interpret mushrooms eating dead material as just doing what they do in real life, without any sort of magic involved. And that certainly could be true. But considering how much magic and life force seemed intertwined, and also the magical uses of mushrooms, I felt safe enough taking the leap here. Still, this is a point which could defeat the theory if you disagree. So, there we have it. That's my theory. The interaction between the various magical entities is very complex. It's something where we need to think about the game as a whole, while also focusing on the details. In this video, we took evidence from several locations to understand what's happening. I want to ask you, does this theory make sense to you? Did I miss something?
I
Am I totally incorrect? The main purpose of this video is to get a discussion going. With enough people thinking about it, we can surely figure out how everything works. If you think you found something, please mention it in the comments below. You can also post it on the RGN subreddit, or come over to the Discord server. We've had some really cool conversations, and I'd love to hear your voice. We will go ahead and end with that. This has been Retro Gaming Now. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video. Have a great day.
No, water is infinite. I should probably try getting a Fletcher. Do some early emerald farming so I can make emerald magnum torches. Magnum torches are pretty neat. They're one of the new things introduced in the mod pack. Essentially, they light up the place and they ensure anything they radiate light off of, no mobs can spawn in there. Like, at all, straight up. I mean, a torch is already supposed to do that, but like the Magnum torch makes it do that really, really well. May as well get this iron. Enchantments would be nice to have soon. Getting fortune and all that good stuff.
The game of Minecraft contains a wide variety of things to discover. Some of the more interesting aspects of the world are the mobs. There are, of course, simple beings like bats and cows, but then there are more complex groups, those which have a societal structure. The villagers are one, as well as the scheming pillagers. But there's a third society that exists in Minecraft, and it may just be the most interesting of them all. These are the piglins. They live a brutal existence in the Nether, trying to survive amongst the harsh elements. It's clear that there's something strange about them. Why do they live in decrepit structures? Are they actually related to pigs? Are they even from the Nether or somewhere else? Welcome to Deep Dive, a series where I explore some of the stranger and more obscure elements.
The new cave generations are cool, but I kinda hate them. It's a personal thing, you see. I used to have a strategy for caving, but that strategy doesn't work anymore. Perfect. I can test out whether or not water freezes.
We're going to try and understand who the piglins are and how they fit into the context of the world.
Because if they do, then I have no choice but to move house again. Pumpkin patch. It's pretty neat. An orchard.
To understand piglins, we must first understand the place that they live. Piglins are a mob that are found exclusively in the Nether. The Nether is one of Minecraft's 3 dimensions, including the overworld and the end. These dimensions are found in different planes of existence, with unique environments and rules. Different dimensions are connected through portals, which teleport someone from one dimension to the next. It's important to recognize that these portals are the only way to get from one to another. The Nether doesn't literally exist beneath the overworld, for example. Rather, it's a completely different place, connected only by portals. This may seem obvious, but it's actually quite important. Although it's possible to travel between dimensions, it requires knowledge of how to build a portal. In the case of the Nether, the portal can be built by constructing an obsidian frame and heating it. This will connect to a nearby portal in the Nether if one exists, or spawn a new portal if one doesn't. The Nether portal operates 2 ways. Teleporting to the Nether automatically creates a path back home. There's something really interesting about the construction of the Nether portal. It requires pure obsidian, which does not spawn naturally in the Nether. It is, however, abundant in the overworld. What this means is that the first connection between the 2 dimensions had to have originated in the overworld. Since the Nether has no obsidian, it's impossible that the reverse happen. This is important because it allows us to put the Nether in a different context. The modern-day Nether is not the natural version of the Nether. Instead, it's the dimension after it was explored by foreign beings. An important distinction that we'll need to keep in mind is whether or not something is native to the Nether. Has it always been there, or was it introduced through a portal? The Nether is quite a diverse place, both in flora and fauna. There are flying ghasts, fungal forests, and lava-walking striders. However, there's a big trait that unites them. These mobs are immune to fire and lava. This makes intuitive sense. In a scorchingly hostile dimension, perhaps no ability is more key to survival than immunity to heat. We see examples of this on Earth. Many organisms have adapted to extremely tough environments, typically known as extremophiles. The same has happened in the Nether. To truly thrive, a mob must be resistant to fire. Fire immunity can serve as a basic test as to whether or not something is native to the Nether. An easy example is the Striders. Fire resistance is crucial to their lifestyle. They're so adapted to walking on lava that being anywhere else is uncomfortable. They become cold and shivery on solid ground. Thus, Striders are almost certainly native to the Nether. The same could be said for the Magma Cube. Although there is a similarity to slimes, Magma Cubes have perfectly adapted to the environment in which they live.
Yep,
they can use their hopping abilities to navigate the sharp rocks of the Basalt Deltas biome with ease. They're also fireproof, useful for the random pools of lava that are found scattered about. These traits show that Magma Cubes are also native to the Nether. How about a Forerunner? Let's examine the Endermen. They are not fire resistant. They're also found in multiple dimensions, including the End, which is full of them. So although they might wander around occasionally, Endermen are not native to the Nether. Finally, let's think about the Piglins. Are they natives? The answer is probably no. They are not immune to fire. In fact, they're quite weak to it. In that case, where are they from? To answer that question, we need to take a closer look at them. Piglins are probably the most intelligent creature in the Nether. They are the only group in this dimension that lives as a society. They can be found in the Nether Wastes and Crimson Forest biomes, as well as in Bastion
another backpack, I guess.
Piglins carry gold swords and crossbows, sometimes using them to hunt hoglins. They've developed some sort of economy centered around gold, willing to trade for various types of items. It's an advanced trait that reminds us of the villagers, a similarly intelligent species. Another similarity is that the Piglins have developed specializations. They're split into two categories that are distinct enough that they're separate mobs. The first is the standard Piglin, which we've been talking about so far. But there are also Piglin Brutes, a more aggressive variant with a higher total health. Since they spawn in Bastion remnants only, it seems clear that their job is to act as a line of defense, preventing unauthorized enemies from entering the home base. Piglins appear to have developed in ways somewhat similar to villagers, but there's a big difference. They don't have their own houses. Instead, they live in huge Bastion remnants scattered about. These structures are pretty interesting. Let's take a closer look at them and see if we can figure out what they're for. Bastion remnants exist in a state of decay, with broken down walls and treacherous pathways. The name tells us that this is a remnant of a once great bastion that has since fallen apart. The advancement "those were the days" confirms this suspicion. Bastions are but remains of an ancient past. It's not particularly strange to see broken down structures in Minecraft. Sunken ships and jungle temples both show signs of decay. What's weird is that these ruins are inhabited by the Piglins. Why wouldn't the Piglins repair the place they call home? Blackstone and basalt are common materials in the Nether. It should be easy for the Piglins to fix things up, right? The fact that the Bastion remnants are not repaired tells us something important. It implies that the Piglins did not build the Bastions. If so, then they would be more than capable of repairing them. Rather, the Piglins are merely using the Bastions. This leads to a question: who built the Bastion remnants? As I mentioned earlier, Bastions are made mostly of blackstone and basalt. However, there are a few building materials which should raise some eyebrows. These are lanterns and chains. They both require iron, a material which is not naturally present in the Nether. Furthermore, if we explore the chests, we can find a wide variety of foreign items, including diamond equipment, carrots, apples, and books. All of these require some component that cannot be found in the Nether. They had to have come from the overworld. Let's make things a bit more interesting. We've already established that the only way to travel between dimensions is to use a portal. We don't have to look too far to find one. Ruined portals exist in both the overworld and the Nether, so a connection did exist at one point. These portals also have chests, presumably so that travelers could stock up before they left. At this point, it should be pretty obvious that travelers from the overworld came to the Nether and built the Bastion remnants.
You know what?
Yet the question remains, who?
If
you've watched any other videos in the Deep Dive series, you probably know the answer. Throughout the Minecraft world, there's extensive evidence that there used to exist a humanoid species called the Ancient Builders. They constructed the pyramids and monuments. They sailed in sunken ships. However, they don't exist anymore. Something catastrophic happened, a mass extinction event of sorts. Now they can only be found in their undead form as zombies and skeletons.
Yeah, I'm gonna go live near
that these are the same beings who built the Bastion remnants. The chest loot is characteristic of these builders,
I don't want to move too far. I don't want to migrate too far. I could also live here in the large plains.
Builders have for building these bastions.
But I think there's an advantage to living right next to the
village. They needed a base to protect against the hostile elements. And while that's true, the reality is deeper than just that. Although I've been referring to bastions as a group, there's actually quite a bit of variety to them. There are 4 separate types of bastions, each with a different use. The first type is the bridge, and its purpose is perhaps the most obvious. The Nether is full of dangerous lava lakes. Having a bridge to cross over them would be incredibly useful. The second type of bastion is the housing unit. Its usage is also self-explanatory. Having a secure place to live would be crucial for anyone who spent an extensive amount of time in the Nether.
The
third type of bastion is the stables. Food is hard to find in the Nether, and it's impossible to grow crops because water doesn't exist. It would make sense that meat would be the best source of renewable. What we're discovering is that the ancient builders constructed quite a bit of infrastructure in the Nether.
So sorry.
Bastion remnants are huge. What were the ancient builders doing with them? They certainly weren't going to the Nether for a nice vacation. They were here long-term, capable of self-sustenance. There's something in the Nether worth an extreme amount of effort to obtain. The fourth type of bastion gives us our answer, is the treasure bastion. It has a huge cavern with many gold blocks at the bottom. Where would all this gold come from? The Nether itself. Gold is quite common in Netherrack, much more so.
It's the frickin'...
Where a better place to mine gold than the Nether?
A fact.
But that's not all. Another major reason to mine in the Nether is netherite. It's the ultimate Minecraft material, more durable and more effective than diamond. Crafting netherite requires gold. If the ancient builders were trying to get a vast amount of netherite, they would need an equally vast amount of gold. There's further evidence for this. Netherite scrap, ancient debris, and gold can all be found in bastions. However, they are far more common in treasure remnants. It's also the only place in Minecraft to find a netherite ingot. This implies that both gold and netherite scrap were important, but the true goal was to obtain pure netherite.
Oh yeah, I checked the data packs.
The ancient builders
I don't think there's a way to change data packs when you make once a world has been built.
But there's still a big question we haven't answered.
Sad.
How do the piglins fit into this? After all, the player discovers piglins at Bastion remnants, not ancient builders. To find a solution, we need to travel to an unexpected place, the overworld. Thus far, we've talked about how the piglins live and exist in the Nether. But it's actually possible to find a piglin in the overworld without ever going to the Nether. If lightning strikes a pig, it transforms into a zombified piglin. This is interesting. It tells us that, under certain conditions, a pig can turn into a completely different species. So what exactly is the lightning doing to the pig? One notable property of lightning is extremely hot. In real life, lightning can reach 50,000 Kelvin, many times greater than the surface of the sun. This extreme blast of heat may be what transforms the pig into a piglin. We already know that heat has bizarre properties in Minecraft. It's required for interdimensional teleportation, as both nether portals and end portals require something hot to work. Who's to say that extreme heat doesn't have even more strange properties? This leads us to a somewhat intriguing question. Could it be possible for this transformation to occur without a lightning strike? Is there any other way to use heat to create a piglin from a pig? What would happen if a pig found itself in a place that's well known for its excessive heat? I'm sure you can see what I'm getting at. If the heat from the lightning is indeed what causes the transformation, then it seems at least plausible that heat from the Nether could do the same thing. Maybe it wouldn't be quite so quick, but surely the mechanism could still work. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Why would there even be pigs in the Nether, since they only spawn naturally in the overworld? The answer is, of course, the ancient builders. We already know that they have bastions specifically designed to be stables. Their main food source may very well have been pigs. It makes sense. They're small, easy to transport into the Nether, simple to breed, and provide a rich source of food. They can't farm plants, so pigs are a great alternative. The ancient builders did not know about the pigs' susceptibility to heat. After years and years in the Nether, the pigs began to transform. One day, the ancient builders awoke to find their stables filled with not pigs, but a new species of piglins, something they'd never seen before. This was probably quite shocking to them. But if there's one thing we know about the builders, is that they were creative. They like to think of new ideas, explore new places, and find new ways to get the job done.
Some have fallen.
And the builders had just stumbled upon something very useful. An unlimited supply of beings that could use the same type of tools and equipment that they did. With the discovery of the piglins, the builders saw a tempting opportunity. Why should they bother mining when there was a brand new workforce that could be created from mere pigs? Wouldn't it be better to train these piglins to mine instead? Then the builders could sit back and relax while the piglins did the hard labor in the mines. Why should they put themselves at risk in the dangerous Nether when someone else could do it for them? So the ancient builders began to implement their plan. They showed the piglins how to mine. They taught the piglins the value of gold and that they should be jealous, protecting it from thieves. The piglins went to work in the filthy mines, hauling up gold and netherite when they could find it. The builders expanded their bastions to accommodate this influx of piglins, building special housing units and greatly increasing the number of bastions. The piglins mined so much that eventually no raw netherite remained, just debris of the valuable ore. Yet the builders were still not satisfied, and they instructed the piglins to even mine some of these scraps. But there was a problem. The piglins are not mechanical golems. They are living, breathing, rational beings. We know that piglins can go on hunting parties. They can understand the abstraction of currency. They have different skill sets in the form of specializations. Piglins are smart, possibly even as smart as the ancient builders or Endermen. And unfortunately, it's hard to imagine that the builders didn't realize this. Disturbingly, it seems as though they made a concerted effort to suppress the piglins. There are no nether portals in the remnants. This is not an accident. It's a deliberate choice. By spreading the portals around the nether, it would prevent piglins from easily escaping. Since piglins were not immune to fire, they could easily die trying to make their way to the portals. This effectively trapped them in the Bastion remnants. But even if the piglins did find the portals, it might not have even mattered. Nearby, chests often contained fire charges and flint and steel. I have to wonder if the builders closed the nether portals as they left, reigniting them whenever they needed. The builders did not want piglins escaping. They did not want their mining operation to be disrupted by a piglin revolt, so they ruled them with an iron fist. The piglins toiled away in an environment for which they were unsuited. But then, one day, the extinction event happened in the overworld. Vast numbers of builders died and became undead. Some tried to escape back to the nether, zombifying several piglins before their ultimate demise. The piglins fought back and were able to prevent their entire species from falling as the builders did. Zombified piglins still exist, but the piglins as a whole...
The heck is that noise? It's not showing in the subtitles, but I can hear it.
The piglins were no longer forced to work in the mines. However, that also meant that the constant stream of items from the overworld had dried up. There were no more resupplies of food, armor, or other necessities. As their reserves began to empty,
No, there's zombies groaning. Baby zombies, the worst kind of zombies. There could be a safer way of doing this, actually. I can go strip mining. I can go back to the old house. Or I can go to my current house and just start a strip mine there. Excuse me, what the fuck is this? Okay. Oh my god, carrots! the spider eye. I don't need them yet. I was like, it kinda looks like there's something orange. Are those carrots? And lo and behold, cool! I can get pigs as well! Spring and autumn. I do believe raccoon eyes glow in the dark in real life as well, so that's pretty neat. Hehehe.
Piglins realized they needed to find a way to live in the Nether without help from the overworld. When their iron and diamond tools broke, they replaced them with gold variants. They sent out hunting parties to find hoglins, bringing some of them back into the stables where they used to live. They trained piglin brutes to protect and defend those who couldn't. Yet the piglins were ultimately still trapped in the Bastion remnants. The builders did not teach them the art of construction, only how to mindlessly dig. Years and years passed, and the Bastion remnants began to decay. The piglins ceased mining, having accumulated vast reserves of gold. However, the piglins still held gold in high regard, and began to use it as currency, trading in much the same way as villagers with emeralds. Time continued to pass. By the modern day, the ancient portals had completely decayed, and the piglins eke out a miserable existence in a hostile world. They still keep some relics of their past, willing to trade these bizarre items for more gold. But unfortunately, the piglins as a society were never able to thrive. When the player finds them, they're too far gone. This is the only life they know. The only thing that keeps them going is the prospect of finding just a little bit more gold. The piglins may have survived longer than the ancient builders, but it was these very builders that prevented them from truly flourishing. Through no fault of their own, they're cursed to live in the decaying bastions and the hell that is the Nether. This is one of the more depressing theories we've covered on this channel. We tend to think of the ancient builders as a positive influence, leaving many interesting things to explore. But in this theory, we learned that they had some serious flaws, dominating the piglins for personal gain. When making a theory, we always need to be on the lookout for things that we might have missed or assumptions we've made. As with every video, I ask that you don't take these ideas as absolute truth. Rather, think about the theory critically and come up with your own conclusions. There's certainly a few things we need to discuss. A big component of this theory is the idea that the heat from lightning causes transformation of pigs to piglins. In reality, we don't know for sure if that's the case. It could very well be the electricity or something else entirely. Another thing is that pigs struck by lightning become zombified piglins and not regular piglins. If that's the case, then why wouldn't pigs in the Nether also become zombified piglins? This is a good point to mention. We know that a piglin can't exist in the overworld without becoming a zombie. One explanation is that the zombie plague is airborne. If that's true, then it would make sense that any transformed pig would suddenly become a zombified piglin. I think it's plausible that the same wouldn't happen in the Nether. No airborne plague means that a pig turns into a regular piglin, not a zombie. Since lightning doesn't strike in the Nether, we can't really know for sure, but this line of reasoning makes sense to me. I've heard many theories suggest that the piglins built the bastions. They often point out that there's a block that looks like a pig used in its construction, but I don't see any reason that the ancient builders couldn't have done this. After all, the bastions were used by the piglins, so it would make sense to indicate that somewhere on the structure. It could have even been a warning to other ancient builders to be cautious. This theory definitely doesn't explain everything. For example, are hoglins derived from pigs? It does seem so, and one explanation could be that the fungi in the Crimson Forest have transformed them. There is precedent for this. Cows can be converted into mushrooms by spending enough time in mushroom biomes. However, this is sort of beyond the scope of this theory. It doesn't matter too much even if we can't explain it either way. So there we go. I hope you enjoyed this deep dive. I know a lot of people have been asking for it, but I didn't want to release a video until I was pretty sure I had the right idea. I've been thinking about the piglins for several months now, and I'm really curious to hear what you think about my theory. As always, the RGN Discord is a great place to share your ideas. Oh, and I started a subreddit. Come post your theories there. It would be cool to slowly build up a compilation of all your ideas, and the subreddit makes that convenient. The link is in the description. I hope to see you there. By the way, I wanted to show you this since I didn't have it in time for the special. Once again, thanks so much for 100,000. We'll go ahead and end with that. This has been Retro Gaming Now. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video. Minecraft world is full of life. There are trees, grass, and animals. Spiders come out at night. Fish swim in the sea. The richness and diversity is so great that we may start to think of life as a given because of how common it is. But that idea is not true. In fact, far, far more of the Minecraft world is composed of inanimate material. Stone, water, ores, lava. Despite the abundance of life, most of the world is not living, containing instead raw materials. But what if there was a way to simulate life? Take inanimate material and arrange it in such a way that it replicates many of the elements of living beings without being truly alive. Such a being would be quite useful, would it not? It could do chores or serve as protector, keeping the owner out of harm's way. These beings do exist in Minecraft. They're called golems. However, it's easy to overlook the wealth of complexities surrounding them. The story of the golems, while often untold, is fascinating as long as we're willing to look for it. Welcome to Deep Dive, a series where we have been slowly uncovering the secrets of Minecraft. Tonight, we're going to take a look at the golems, and in the process, we may learn something interesting about the history of the world. This video will be best if you've seen my previous deep dives, especially the video about the villagers, as we'll be looking at the time period right before that. If not, I'll do my best to keep you in the loop. With that out of the way, it's time to get going. Join me for a dive beneath the waves.
Here we are.
The idea of the golem precedes the game of Minecraft by over 1,000 years. The origin of the term is Hebrew, and many writings about golems exist in the Jewish tradition. While specifics differ depending on the story, they all share one central trait. A human creates an artificial creature from clay and then somehow breathes life into it. The most famous account is that of Rabbi Judah Loew ben Bezalel, also known as the Maharal of Prague. It is said that he created a golem out of clay to offer protection to the Jewish community. The golem was very strong and performed physical labor, but as time continued, the golem became deranged, threatening the people it was designed to protect. This forced the rabbi to remove the life force from the golem, returning it to inanimate clay once more. Legend says that Judah Loew stored the remains of the golem in the attic of the Prague synagogue, ready to be activated again should the need arise.
Haven't gotten copper yet.
Now, let's return to Minecraft. Much like the Jewish golem story, we're going to begin sometime in the past, before the appearance of the player. The ancient builders have long been extinct, and the overworld was filled with villages scattered about. The villagers lived a peaceful lifestyle. Despite their knowledge of weaponry and armor, they didn't go to war with other villages. Instead, these villagers were pacifists, preferring to work and trade with one another. It is here that we find our first Minecraft golem, the Iron Golem. Its huge metal body appears intimidating, but the villagers do not fear it. In fact, the golem is quite friendly towards them, giving flowers as gifts. The world outside the village was dangerous, with undead enemies roaming the land. At night, they came and attacked the villages. It's here that we find the true purpose of the golem, to serve as a fierce protector of the village. It was an extremely powerful friend. A swing of its arms dealt massive damage, flinging the enemy away. For all of the timidness of the villagers, the golem was equally intimidating towards those who dared disturb the peace. But things were changing. In recent times, there had emerged a much more potent threat than skeletons and zombies. There was a group of villagers who were beginning to break away from the established traditions. They didn't follow the norms of the village. They uncovered their hands and roamed the world. These outcasts were constructing tall outposts, the purpose of which was unknown to the villagers. Whatever it is they were doing out there, it was changing them. Their skin had become gray and ragged. But the villagers dared not trek to the outpost and learn, for the outcasts did not share the pacifism of the villagers. Instead, they had developed new technology, crossbows, which allowed for powerful attacks at a long distance, and they would not hesitate to use them on the villagers, as many an unlucky villager discovered. These ex-villagers were clearly a threat to the stability of the village, and the sworn protector agreed. Sensing their growing evil, the Iron Golem attacked any outcasts on sight. Although skirmishes occasionally developed, the outcasts knew that, despite their ranged weapons, they were no match for the Iron Golem. It could kill one of them with 2 swipes of its rugged arms. It's implied that the villagers knew how to construct Iron Golems. They're capable of summoning them when gossiping or panicking. The recipe is fairly straightforward. 4 iron blocks in a T-shape with a carved pumpkin on top. Doing this animates the golem, creating artificial life. A swarm protector is always just a few blocks away, no matter how dire the circumstance. For the outcasts, it must have been quite frustrating that such timid and weak beings had this tough of a defense mechanism. Of course, these outcasts were once villagers themselves, and they knew the recipe for the iron golem. Perhaps a golem of their own would help turn the tide, but an issue quickly presented itself. Their iron golem, seemingly aware of their evil intentions, turned on them, attacking and killing the outcasts on sight. But the outcasts were not ready to give up hope just yet. They'd proven their intelligence by inventing the crossbow. Would it be possible for them to create a golem that didn't attack them and would instead do their bidding? They knew the recipe for the iron golem, but to create their own, they would need more than simple steps to follow. They would need to understand the golem, to attain a deeper level of knowledge. Anyone could follow a recipe, even the bumbling villagers could do that. But knowing how the recipe worked was a different matter altogether. It allowed for the user to make substitutions and adjustments and perhaps even create new recipes. Was there a way to create a new type of golem? So they began to experiment. They gathered iron and pumpkins and constructed iron golems, placing them in sturdy cages for observation. The T-shape was intriguing. Could they simply swap the materials and make a new type of golem? Perhaps the scarecrows were an early attempt. The shape matched the T-shape of the iron golem. Regardless, the outcasts were failing. Despite their best efforts, they could not seem to create a different type of golem. It was becoming increasingly clear that these outposts were not sufficient for true experimentation. They were quite exposed, and an experiment gone wrong could wreak havoc on the surrounding area. The group needed a home base, a centralized location where they could try things safely. So they began construction on a huge mansion deep within the dark forest. They would no longer need to worry about food. Indoor farms would provide sustenance. They wouldn't need to sleep out in the cold. Ornate bedrooms provided shelter. Any knowledge they found could be written in books and placed in vast libraries. Equipment could be forged, items could be stored. But all of this paled in comparison to the largest benefit of all, the ability to experiment freely. The first order of business was to create a place where iron golems could be built and then examined.
Cobblestone
In the
is,
basement of the mansion, prisons were constructed with redstone
to be honest,
operated doors.
not a very
An outcast
pretty
could
block.
quickly build an iron golem and then flee out
Something
the door
I've
and trap
never
the golem. But
been
this
good
proved
at,
to be
but I've
inadequate.
always wanted to be
The
good
iron
at
golems
is
have long arms
to be a
that can
good
swipe
builder in
through walls.
Minecraft.
To combat this, arenas
Since I
were
want them to be
constructed
made
with
of stone, I'm
observation
pretty sure
mountains.
stone bricks
Up
have
here,
better
the
blast
outcasts would
protection
be
anyway.
completely safe from the golem.
Stone
These
has
rooms were also
lower
useful
blast
for
protection
observing the
than
reaction of the
cobblestone
golem
for
to
some
various other
reason,
mobs. Despite
but
capturing
bricks
the
do
occasional
have
villager,
do
they
go
could
back to
never
being
seem to find a
stronger.
way to get the iron golem to attack them. As time passed, the outcasts slowly began to understand the requirements for golems. A pumpkin was necessary, so they began to grow pumpkins alongside their melon
Crafting
farms.
blueprint?
While it may
What?
first seem as if these pumpkins were grown as food, the outcasts did not have consistent access to eggs and sugarcane required to make
Interesting.
pumpkin pie. No,
Rocky
these pumpkins
dirt.
were made for their golden
Amazing.
experiments. They had more than enough food already. But for some reason, a normal pumpkin didn't work. It had to be carved,
Normal
a task
stone
which
isn't
the
great
skilled lumberjacks were able to
So
do.
yeah,
There's a mysterious
making a
room with a
house out of
single
stone
carved
bricks.
pumpkin found in the mansion. While we
As
don't
a
know exactly
basis.
what they were doing, it appears as though this was one of their attempts at understanding the golem recipe. Yet, despite these minor improvements in understanding, they were still pretty lost. They had not yet deduced why the pumpkin must have parts of it removed. Why did it have to be carved? All of this hard work caused the outcasts to become closer to one another, and they were beginning to form a combined identity.
excuse
They
me?
were no longer scattered ex-villagers.
What
Instead,
the-
they developed their own culture.
I can craft
This
golden
included
apples
unique
again?
globes, as well as their own signature architectural style. Furthermore, they were all focused on the same goal of recreating the golem. So they began to think of themselves as a unified group of illagers. In other words, they now had a collective face. The illagers symbolized this by making a flag, a banner representing the group as a whole. This face legitimized them to the outside world, bringing life into their group, and they carried their flag wherever they went. And suddenly, it dawned on them. The important component of a golem construction was not the T-shape nor the material. It was the face. Just like their own society, without a face, the golem was little more than random blocks. But the face is what converted the inanimate components into a truly unified whole. It legitimized the golem, and it breathed artificial life into an otherwise stagnant design. With this newfound discovery, the illagers returned to their
Ooh,
experimentation.
I'm the best.
The iron golem had a face similar to that of the villagers which it swore to protect. An oblong head, a large nose, and a unibrow. Would it be possible for the illagers to build a parallel golem that looked like themselves instead? As a way to process these ideas, they began to construct massive effigies of themselves out of wool. Perhaps this would somehow help them discover how to construct a golem for themselves. There was an interesting subtlety in the design of these statues that's worth mentioning. They were not accurate representations of the faces of the Illagers. The big difference was the shape of the eyebrows. While the Illagers had two slanted eyebrows, these statues had a single long unibrow. This wasn't just some minor mistake. The Illager flag clearly has slanted eyebrows, so we know the Illagers were capable of doing it correctly. This implies that the slight difference in the shape of these statues was intentional. Something to note is that this unibrow has the same shape as the two beings which the Illagers knew rather well. The Villagers, of course, but also the Iron Golem. This makes me think that the Illagers believed that this slight distinction was important with respect to the construction of the Golem. And after countless experiments, the Illagers finally pulled it off, creating a Golem of their own. This Golem was the Ravager.
I'm gonna try making that upgrade base. That's supposed to be for the backpacks, I think. Rather than having a quantity of backpacks on the inventory, having good backpacks would be way better, wouldn't you agree?
Each of them has knockback resistance, a trait which is quite rare in the Minecraft universe. On the other side, both the Ravager and the Iron Golem have a powerful attack which flings the victim into the air. Their attack is also strong enough to hit through a solid wall. But the similarities don't end there. Both mobs have the exact same total health at 100 points. They're also physically similar.
Wait there, I wonder if their fur can be converted into leather.
The motion of their limbs is another connection. The Iron Golem's arms
swing. I don't really want to mess with them though, I know these guys hit hard.
The tops of their legs stick up unnaturally high compared to the body. Amongst all quadrupedal mobs in Minecraft, the Ravager is the only one that looks like this. Furthermore, Iron Golems will never attack villagers, just as Ravagers will never attack Illagers. Yet all of this pales compared to the smoking gun. Both Iron Golems and Ravagers do not exist in the world naturally. Think about it. Iron Golems can be built by the player or built by villagers. They're never found wandering throughout the world. Ravagers are the same way. A wild Ravager simply does not exist. Instead, they can be found in raids in conjunction with other Illagers. The Illagers create them when they need them, just like the villagers. I believe that the construction of the Ravager was the first major accomplishment of the Illagers. To successfully reverse engineer an Iron Golem and then use the knowledge to construct a golem of their own was no small feat. It was a serious extension of the capabilities of the villagers. With the construction of animated beings from inanimate material, the Illagers were now firmly established as the dominant group technologically. This allowed them to assume some level of control over the villagers, making any skirmishes much less one-sided. But the Illagers were not done. The capability to produce a simulation of life caused them to start thinking about control over real life.
Yikes.
And this eventually led to their production of the Totem of Undying. However, we don't have time to go over that story here. If you're curious, check out the above video on the Illagers, which starts at this point in the timeline and explores the totem in much more detail. Let's take a step back. While this Illager story is important, there are other golems in the game, namely the Snow Golem. What makes this one strange is that there's no evidence that it was ever actually built before the player constructs it. I cannot find any depictions of it in the world, and it doesn't spawn naturally, except for the extremely rare case of an Enderman.
Alright, they don't like being picked up.
That makes analysis of it a little bit trickier, although we do know that it has the basic elements of a golem, including construction from inanimate material and a face. However, it is far, far weaker than either the Iron Golem or the Ravager. This instability implies that this golem is advanced, while it still attempts to guard whoever built it by throwing snowballs and cannot even cause damage. So while it's dubious whether knowledge of it existed outside of the player, it is nonetheless a golem. Now, let's think for a second. Is there anything else in the world that may be artificially constructed and also serves as a guard or protector? Well, the very word itself offers a clue. What if the guardians that protect the ocean monuments are also golems? It's an idea worth considering. First, despite the fins, these guardians are clearly not fish. They survive on land indefinitely, which no fish in Minecraft can do. While axolotls can survive for 5 minutes, they still eventually die, unlike the guardians. Another thing is that guardians seem to have a single sense. They can only attack players within line of sight. When they do, they fire a bizarre laser, unlike anything else seen in Minecraft. Furthermore, they look extremely similar to prismarine blocks. They even have the unibrow, just like the Ravager and the Iron Golem. The Elder Guardians are also interesting because they're the only mob in the entire game which can never respawn. Every single other mob has a way of spawning again, even bosses like the Ender Dragon. But this is not true for the Elder Guardian. A finite number exists in the world. Once they're gone forever. If they truly are golems, then perhaps this is because there's no one left who knows how to build them. If you see my monuments video, I argued that there was an ancient humanoid species known as the Ancient Builders. They constructed many of the overworld structures, including the monuments. If our analysis is correct, then it means they also had knowledge of how to construct golems. And while I cannot prove it, I suspect that the pumpkins we find in shipwrecks were used in construction of the Guardians. It seems to align with research from this video as well as the Dive series in general. As with all deep dives, I encourage you to make up your own opinions instead of trusting my analysis as absolute truth. For those of you who've seen the whole series, you'll notice that I structured this video in a slightly different way, attempting to tell the story while bringing in evidence instead of the other way around. However, there are some parts of the story which remain unclear. For example, why did the Illagers leave the village in the first place? It may be as simple as them thinking differently than the villagers, or there may be a more explicit reason. Whatever it is, we didn't quite figure that out for sure. Another potential issue is that we don't know what material was used in the construction of the Ravagers. Nonetheless, I felt that this whole did not outweigh the many other elements that are golem-like. Perhaps a deeper question is how
way
the
too far
villagers know
away
how to
anyway
construct a golem, since the development of the Ravager ultimately came from this knowledge.
I'm just gonna kill him.
It seems unlikely that the villagers could discover this on their own, given that the rest of their technology is much less advanced. I think to truly answer this question requires a more detailed analysis on the villagers' place in the world, and I shall defer this discussion to a future video.
Whoa.
I want to close with an idea that we may return to in an upcoming theory. Let's think back to the original story about the golem. All these golems we've seen in Minecraft were constructed from inanimate material, became animated, and then served their masters, just like in the story. But in the examples we've seen, something's missing. The golem never betrays its original creator like we would expect, which leaves us with an intriguing question. Is there a golem somewhere in Minecraft which does betray its creator? Is it possible that we somehow missed a golem? We won't answer that question today, but it's an idea worth considering. Golems are fascinating, and the story led us to some really interesting places. What do you think? Do you agree? Disagree? Did I miss something? Let me know in the comments below. I really enjoy seeing your theories. You can also head on over to the RGN Discord and the RGN subreddit to share your ideas. I put a link in the description. We're starting to approach some of the really big questions of Minecraft, and I'm looking forward to the upcoming deep dives. I'm very happy that you are all here with me on this journey. We will go ahead and end with that. This has been Retro Gaming Now. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video. Have a great day.
don't notice that you are alone. Oh. Ooh, Illager. Oh, no wait, that's just from the Illager camp tower thing. An oven? Tree fertilizer. It needs coral? Oh, I can make diamond magnum torch. Pack items into their compressed variants, only 2x2 recipes. Void items selected in filter. Blasting ores and metal stuff in an upgrade tab. Smelting up. Excuse me? Restocks backpack from Sleep, right? Crafting table in the backpack. Next to the backpack, pick up items. Swap tools. Ooh. The closet upgrade would be good too. A portable jukebox, that's really funny. Okay, it seems there's no way to turn them into a double chest. Or maybe there is, but I don't have the means for it. Ooh, okay, that is expensive. I don't think I should be expecting to be able to upgrade my backpacks anytime soon. What the heck can I do with bison fur? Am I actually just the worst person to ever live because of because of that? Shit, man, how was I supposed to know? Yeah, upgrades are definitely for late game. I think I am indeed just a terrible person. And I'm definitely gonna have to make a sorting system. On my new base. It has to be big. It has to be nice. It has to be pretty. It would be unacceptable for it to be otherwise. Stack for a stack for now, huh? Oh, sure, I can. Shit, I could have sworn I had more cobble to smelt. I wasted that block of coal. I mean, it is coal. Interesting. Can I make stone shutters? Copper sheet. Oh. That's a lot of trapdoors. Very nice. it's a pretty common tactic to use trapdoors as windows. Again, I don't like working with glass. Glass looks nice, but they're not gonna look well with what I'm trying to do. I want to see what other weapons I can make. Not having the recipes auto-unlock really sucks. I've been used to playing Minecraft without them, but with new mods that technically means I have new recipes I don't know, and the recipe table becomes really useful. And I take for granted how useful this thing really is now that we have it. Ooh, look at this. Again, the wooden armor still just way stronger for some reason. create mod stuff. Copper diving boots? Andesite alloy? Whoa. Backpack. Is this all? Yep, they are all part of the create mod. Andesite's useful now. Right, I don't really want to make another set of iron armor. The wood armor is still a pretty strong alternative. So, I have bones, don't I? Not enough. Guess I'll just have to look up the recipe some other time, I guess. I'll go chop for wood one last time, and mine for some cobblestone for a little bit more, until I hit the 2-hour timer. And then I'll stop right there. You know, I could just strip this place. It's got lots of cobble. These fools. The more weapons mod didn't really specify what made each weapon stand out. Which, you know, kinda sucks. When you offer variety, you need to make sure there's differences and ways to tell those differences.
Minecraft is a game of enormous creativity. The world is a canvas, the blocks are the paint, and the player is the artist. Yet the Minecraft world is not static. Even as the player does nothing, things happen in the world. Sheep eat grass, mobs spawn and die. Lightning strikes the earth, and trees burn. Random events occur even without the player. The canvas has a life of its own. But what if there never was a player? What would happen if we let the Minecraft world run forever by itself? Random movements and events, unencumbered by the will of a human being controlling an avatar. Could anything interesting ever happen? Let's consider such a world. We won't worry about the obvious practical limitations of infinite time, such as processing power or memory concerns. We'll also assume that this is an environment where chunks are loaded, such as on a server. With that, the stage is set. We now boot up our world and we watch. To begin, there's really not much to see. Animals walk around, villagers go about their routines, mobs spawn during the nighttime. The world is as we expect. Everything that we see is apparently no different to an average gameplay session. However, despite this mundanity, there's one important result worth mentioning. With infinite time, mobs that move around could eventually move to whichever block we want. It doesn't matter how far away this block is, all that matters is that they have a path to it. Since mobs take random paths, their movement is predicated on a random number generator. If we generate enough times, we'll eventually get the correct sequence for wherever we want these mobs to go. Do we want to get a creeper on top of a jungle temple? Do we want a husk on a mountaintop? By rolling the dice enough times, this will eventually happen. Remember, time is not a problem here. We're not looking at what's likely. With an infinite amount of time, that doesn't matter. Instead, we're looking at what is possible. A skeleton taking a trek across the world to a certain block is possible, assuming it can find a path. In fact, we could have a group of 3 baby zombies on chickens travel from one world border to the other. Is this likely? Not even close, but it could eventually happen, and that's the key to this entire experiment.
Other
moving around
cobblestone.
Don't really do much. Sure, it's cool, but is it really interesting? Not so much. However, there's another mob that can do something that's much more unique than simply getting to faraway lands. This mob is going to prove to be one of the crucial building blocks for what we're going to do in this video. I am, of course, talking about the Endermen. Endermen are atypical in many ways. They're allergic to water, they show up in all 3 dimensions, and they can teleport. But all of this pales in comparison to their most powerful ability. They can randomly pick up and place certain types of blocks. In a normal game of Minecraft, this is a minor annoyance. But have you ever played long enough on a world that there are many blocks that have been moved by Endermen? Seemingly wherever you go, you find random grass blocks, and at some point it starts to become a little bit annoying. Well, in our infinite time system, the Enderman could do exactly the same thing. However, we have so much time available that the Enderman could eventually construct almost arbitrary structures. The Enderman could randomly choose to make a pillar, construct patterns, or spell out text. They can also remove blocks and build using negative space. Their teleportation capabilities allow them to go through walls, assuming that there's a place for them to land. They look for open spots 32 blocks along each axis. This means that they can move vertically up or down into caves. As a result, the Endermen are able to get to a very broad range of locations. There are some limitations to the Endermen, though. While they can dig a little ways down, they'll eventually hit stone. They cannot pick up stone blocks, so it effectively prevents them from further progress. They can also only place blocks on top of existing blocks. This means that there are certain structures that are not possible for the Endermen to construct, such as a bridge across the ocean. To do this would require the ability to place blocks on the side, which they cannot do. Nonetheless, the Endermen are capable of creating some very powerful things. For example, it's possible for an Enderman to make a snow golem. All they need to do is pick up a carved pumpkin from a pillager outpost, move to a snowy biome with 2 snow blocks already stacked, and then place the pumpkin. And boom, just like that, a natural snow golem has been produced. Our new snow golem possesses the same traits as other mobs. It can move to wherever we want it to go, so long as there's a path. Yet the snow golem unlocks a new and powerful ability. They're aggressive towards hostile mobs. In fact, they will actively seek them out and throw snowballs. While the snow golem can't damage most mobs, it does make them angry, and they'll retaliate by attacking the golem. It may not seem like much, but we've just discovered another powerful capability: arrows. If a snow golem attacks a skeleton, the skeleton might fire an arrow and miss. A normal arrow isn't that useful, but skeletons can spawn with enchanted equipment. If a skeleton has a flame bow, then it can fire a flaming arrow when it's annoyed by a snow golem. A flaming arrow will not light a block of fire, but what it can do is activate TNT. Remember, Endermen can pick up and place TNT blocks, so if we can discover a way for an Enderman to find TNT, then we'll open up a new capability in our world. It is very rare that TNT blocks are naturally generated. The first place to look is in a desert pyramid. While an Enderman can teleport to their base, unfortunately there's no way for it to pick up the TNT. It's hidden beneath a layer of sandstone, a block that the Endermen are powerless to move. But there's one other place in the world where TNT blocks can be generated. There's a secret room in Woodland Mansions that looks like the end portal. Within this room, there are 2 TNT blocks sitting out in the open.
What am I doing?
The Endermen can get here by teleporting, and they can pick up and move these blocks. Once placed, a snow golem can find its way to the block, anger a skeleton with a flame bow, and have the skeleton miss and hit the TNT. This blows the door of possibilities wide open. We can now produce an explosion almost at will. All we need to do is have this formula occur at the right location. Again, the odds of this are astronomically low. Woodland Mansions are rare, and is even more so. But what matters is that it's possible. It can and will happen with enough time. However, there is a much simpler way to create explosions. If a snow golem attacks a creeper, then the creeper will retaliate and blow up. This is substantially more likely than the TNT trick. The major disadvantage to creepers is that explosions cannot be easily stockpiled ahead of time, a trait we will need later on. Regardless of which option we use, our capability for explosions allows the Endermen to dig below the surface. They can create a path to almost any underground location. In terms of underground destinations, there is one that sticks out above the rest: the Stronghold. That's right, the Endermen can use explosions to make a path to the Stronghold, and more specifically the Portal Room. Now, most portal rooms will not be lit by default. The players intended to find Eyes of Ender and place them. But there's a 1 in a trillion chance that the frame will be completely filled. And if we happen to be on one of these seeds, then the Endermen will have just created a path from the surface down to the end. There are several useful consequences of this. First, Endermen can take blocks from the overworld to the end. They keep holding them even as they pass through a portal. Furthermore, other mobs can wander their way to the end alongside the Endermen. The portal is a one-way ticket, so whatever enters won't be able to leave. But we can get almost any overworld land-based mob into the end naturally. Anything that shows up at the end is going to find itself face-to-face with the Ender Dragon. And we're presented with a question. Is it possible for these mobs to somehow defeat the dragon? The first step is to destroy the regenerating end crystals on the pillars. Endermen can come from the overworld and build huge staircases. Then it's time for our favorite duo. The snow golem angers the skeleton, and the skeleton fires an arrow that misses and destroys the end crystal. Repeat this for each pillar, and we've now got a dragon that doesn't regenerate. The next move is to find a way to inflict damage on the dragon. We're going to steal a trick from the speedrunning community and take care of it using explosions. Remember, we can place TNT and light it. All we need to do is have enough Endermen bring TNT from the overworld, and the snow golems and flame bow skeletons will light it off. Slowly but surely, the dragon will take damage, and eventually it will be defeated. Think about just how absurd this is. With the right random numbers, it is possible for the Ender Dragon, the final boss of Minecraft, to die with no player intervention whatsoever. Will this ever happen? No, but the fact that it could happen is amazing. It's all just random decisions by the mobs, but if the decisions happen to align in a perfect way, these mobs can make the main story of Minecraft. The Endermen, with a few allies, have freed themselves from the Ender Dragon. Who needs some outside player? But this is just the beginning. What else can these mobs do? To start, it's possible to drop the dragon egg as an item. All that needs to happen is one additional explosion. When it touches the egg, it drops and falls into the portal. Then, a fox in the overworld can pick it up. Is this useful? Not really, but look at it. It's a fox with a dragon egg. Is there any way to get off the main island? As we mentioned earlier, it's not possible for the Endermen to build a bridge over empty space, as they cannot place blocks on the side of other blocks. They also can't get through the end gateway since there's only one open block of vertical space. For now, it doesn't appear to be possible to get Endermen holding overworld blocks off the main island. So what else could we do in the overworld? It turns out that explosions are useful for another purpose, destroying chests. This lets certain loot items exist on the ground. One item that may be of use are Frostwalker boots. When equipped, these boots allow the user to walk across water by creating ice blocks. To make it more interesting, there are some zombies and skeletons that spawn with the capability to equip armor. If a zombie picked up a pair of Frostwalker boots, then it would have gained the ability to place blocks
being able
on
to
water,
see a minimap
albeit
of caves
temporarily.
really feels like cheating.
Let's say that this happens and the zombie walks its way over to an ocean monument. It can bring several
I think the minimap should just show the surface.
They can then place their sand on top of the ice. The ice will eventually melt, and the sand will fall into the ocean below. If this is
you can't find diamonds with the minimap at the very least. There is, in fact, that true.
In sand. There would no longer
Still,
be
just
any
being
water
able to
source
see
blocks outside the monument. Then the
where
endermen can
potential
remove the sand
caves
blocks
are,
one by one,
and
effectively
how
draining the
deep they
monument.
can potentially
Some
go,
well-placed explosions would give access to the interior, which could be drained by
can
repeating the
help
same
you
method.
decide a lot
Finally,
of
the
things.
Endermen could finish off the Elder Guardians with even more TNT explosions. That's right, a monument could be defeated naturally. Oh, but we are not done just yet. There's another major challenge that we now must tackle, lighting another portal. Now this one relies on a specific type of world generation occurring. I should mention here that I'm not 100% certain if it could happen, so if there are any generation experts
This is
watching
great,
this
it
video,
either means there's an amethyst
anyways,
place
ruined portals
somewhere.
are generated randomly throughout the overworld, and they're an incomplete version of a portal. There are several possible configurations. One of them is particularly
Or
useful.
this is a
Portal
giant
number 6 is almost complete, save for one missing block at the top. If we
thingy
can find a way to get obsidian onto this block, then we will
for
complete
iron.
the structure of the frame. Usually when a portal generates, it replaces the blocks in the immediate area, placing the portal in a small cave. But that isn't true when the portal generates in a desert. Instead, the portal is buried in the landscape. What needs to be generated is a ruined portal with no crying obsidian buried in the sand, with a lava pool directly intersecting the top layer. This will give us a ruined portal that is nearly complete, but with a lava source block in the final slot. If this were to
I
occur,
don't
then
think
the
that's
Endermen
what's
could
gonna
build an
happen.
aqueduct from a nearby water source and freeze the lava into obsidian. Next, the Endermen can close the aqueduct and clear up any cobble, probably using explosions. We now have a completed portal frame, but how can it be lit? Flame arrows do not work, so our TNT strategy is off the table. Lighting this is actually quite tricky. The obvious idea to try is lightning. On hard mode, a lightning strike will affect adjacent blocks, so a strike right next to the portal will light it. Remember though, our portal is in the desert. Since there's no rain in the desert, lightning will not strike. What about a drowned with a channeling trident? Unfortunately, as of 1.18.1, enchantments on a drowned trident don't work. Maybe this is a bug, but for now we're going to need to find another way. Could the Endermen make a path of flammable blocks and lead fire from a lightning strike elsewhere? Nope, the Endermen cannot pick up most flammable blocks. However, the Endermen can pick up TNT. TNT is a basalt block. While it is flammable, it doesn't appear to be as useful because fire causes it to explode. Or so we would think. In a strange twist, fire can sometimes spread to it without immediately activating the explosion. So what needs to occur is the following. A TNT block must be placed adjacent to the portal. Then a nearby heat source must light it in such a way that it doesn't explode immediately and instead lights the portal. Then the Endermen must quickly move it out of the way before it does explode and undo all the hard work. It's an extremely precise sequence of events that must occur in a world with specific generation. But if all of that were to happen, find ourselves with a lit nether portal generated naturally. That's right, our randomly moving mobs have managed to create a connection between all three dimensions. Unfortunately, there isn't much to do in the nether. It's not possible to construct a wither, since Endermen cannot pick up and place wither skeleton skulls. What we can do, however, is bring nether mobs to the surface. While many mobs avoid nether portals, through instant cramming it should be possible to force them through if need be. A baby hoglin that goes through a nether portal will turn into a baby zoglin. The baby zoglin could find its way to the end portal. Since baby zoglins are less than 1 block high, it means that they can get into an end gateway. The Endermen will build a staircase, and they will stay far enough away. Our baby zoglin can work its way up to the gateway and enter. These gateways can sometimes lead to locations directly above inn ships. If this were to be the case, then the zoglin would fall out of the portal and land onto a ship. As it moved around, it would eventually make its way inside the ship, where it would meet a shulker. Despite it being a baby, it would still attack the shulker. The shulker would eventually be killed, if not by a single zoglin, then by a few of them working together. So that's nice, but what about that elytra? Is there any way to get it off the wall? A snowball would do it, and so would an arrow. But remember, snow golems and skeletons are too tall to fit in the end gateway. However, there is a way to get a skeleton jockey into the gateway.
Here?
If it's hit by a snowball, such as from a snow golem, then it can be pushed into the gateway and teleport, despite being too tall. Our jockey will land on the inn ship and head down into the elytra room. The fiery zoglin will attack the jockey, and the skeleton will retaliate, firing arrows. A poorly placed arrow will hit the item frame, dropping the elytra on the ground. Once the fighting is done, a fox from the overworld will find its way into the end, come to the ship, and pick up the elytra. It can't use it, of course, but the game is as close as it can get to enjoying one of the great rewards for killing the dragon. We killed the dragon, picked up an elytra, defeated an ocean monument, all completely naturally.
Yeah, I don't think that leads to... Oh, it's schist from twigs, whatever that means. I'm just very sad now. Well, at the very least I made plenty more wood. Or stone. I think I can make a nice big base with that. Of adequate size. I don't know still what shape my build will go. I don't have a blueprint, I'm just planning on winging it for the most part. I hope I make at least something that looks decent. For now, this is the end. Whoa.
Obviously, this video is a thought experiment more than anything. The odds of things happening in these specific orders are incomprehensibly low. It's so low that it reaches the point of absurdity. The Minecraft example is similar to other thought experiments. It's analogous to the story of a monkey putting random keys on a typewriter. Almost everything it will produce is meaningless gibberish. But given enough time, the monkey will one day type the complete works of Shakespeare. This idea exists in mathematics with the appropriately named infinite monkey theorem. This theorem states that, in infinite time, the monkey will eventually type every possible finite text with a 100% probability. This isn't just speculation, it's been mathematically proven to be the case. The same principle applies to Minecraft, but instead of monkeys typing on a typewriter, random number generators selecting specific values.
You poisoned yourself, you idiot.
Nothing, but not all of them. Just like the monkey writing Shakespeare, the random generators are capable of doing great things, like killing the internet. Minecraft is a game that gives the player a unique sense of creative control. But given enough time, perhaps Minecraft itself is capable of some creativity of its own. It's time to start wrapping up this video. The idea of what's possible in Minecraft is fascinating, and I had tons of fun finding new and creative ways for events to happen in the game. A lot of the brainstorming for this video came in conjunction with members on the Retro Gaming Now Discord. I'm very thankful for their creative ideas. If you have any interest in this video or the community in general, I encourage you to join. It really is a great place to bounce ideas off of one another. and it was instrumental in the production of this video. Let me know what you think in the comments. Are there any other cool things that could happen that I missed? I'm almost certain that there are, so I'm really excited to see your response. Also, if you enjoyed this video, feel free to subscribe. It really helps me out. We'll go ahead and end with that. This has been Retro Gaming Now. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video.
Oh wow, that was lucky. I really don't want to kill these guys. I really want a third backpack. Don't let your deaths be in vain, please. There you go. This should be enough for me to transfer all of the things I want to transfer. When it finally comes time to move. All that's left to do is wait. I'll probably just do some more strip mining because cobblestone should still be a good resource to have lots of. You know? For now, it's midnight. I'm gonna go.
Do you get the sense that the Minecraft community isn't quite right? Whenever I